So, Gods of Egypt. It's a very shiny movie. It's got a lot of CGI, a lot of gold. It revolves around Egypt, as you might guess from the title, and it revolves around gods, and the gods of, you guessed it, Egypt. It starts off with the gods ruling the mortals down in the mortal world with the main character, Horus. He's about to come into power. He's inheriting the throne, about to be able to rule over all these mortals. The current king's brother, who's the one who's giving up the throne, Horus's uncle, he comes to give his gift for the new kinging, and that's when things get interesting. Set actually decides to throw a coup d'etat, overthrows the entirety of the god government, and then Horus gets his eyes ripped out and he's cast away into powerlessness. And that's really the gist of the movie. Mm-hmm. So what did you think about it?
Well, this movie, going into it, I hadn't heard that much about it. I was thinking, okay, another movie about gods and, mythology and stuff. I wasn't really sure what to expect. So I kind of went into it with an open mind. And I would say at the beginning, I was kind of like, all right, we'll see where this goes. But the further along we got into the movie, I think it kind of just dragged on for a while, I would say, definitely. And it was very predictable, a lot of, cliches I think you would expect. The character development, I wouldn't say was that great. We just kind of got introduced to these characters, didn't really learn any of their backstory or anything, just kind of got thrown right into this plot and these kind of action scenes that didn't really make that much sense, I felt like, with what was happening. It was just kind of for the sake of having these action scenes. I will say that, they had some cool special effects. There were definitely some good action scenes, I'd say, but overall, I would say I didn't enjoy this movie that much. I found it to be, pretty predictable, and
I wouldn't even be that lenient with it. I'm sorry. I
was just trying to find something redeeming.
This movie it had a very interesting world. You could have made it into a great and interesting movie that built the world up into being something very, very interesting. But it didn't fulfill that. It lacked in almost every single other aspect where it needed to do, its movie thing.
I would say this movie just was very comedic, honestly. I would say I don't think it was intended to be comedic, but I think there were moments where, when the guy's eyes were pulled out of his eye sockets and there was gold blood running everywhere, I'd say I giggled at that, but I think it was supposed to be dramatic. I think I was supposed to be shocked and gasping at that, but I was not, so.
Definitely not meant to be comedic. Some of the effects were laughable, so that's where you get the laughter there. And the plot was also somewhat laughable.
It just had a lot of holes in it, I would say, especially towards the ending. Things would come out of nowhere, conflicts were super easily resolved that shouldn't have been. It was just almost like the director was kind of looking for an easy way to end the film, I think, by the end.
I would also say that some of the acting was not top tier either. You see a lot of poorly delivered lines that just doesn't really give immersion into this world, and that would have been its advantage, is this interesting world that you've used all this CGI to create. And so with the acting being bad and the fact that they don't develop the characters at all and the plot is poorly done, it's just a bad movie.
Yeah. I definitely would not recommend this movie unless, I don't know, you're a fan of bad acting, not so great special effects.
That's definitely one thing.
Basic historical film where everyone has British accents in not a British country. Like, but yeah, I was not a fan of this movie. By the end, I was kind of like, what time is it? Like, can we wrap this up? And luckily, I guess the director kind of felt the same way. He like wanted to wrap it up. He just kind of resolved everything really quick at the end, which fine with me, but not the most creative.
Yeah, the biggest complaint I had, while everything else was subpar, you could deal with it. You know, it was watchable until they get to the ending stages of the movie. That's when everything that the movie sets up, all of these rules, all of these that's impossibles, all of the plot aspects of it, the powers that each god has given, how the bad guy, you know, gains more and more power at the end, and each failure of the main characters goes on and is getting harder and harder, is resolved very, very, very poorly.
Yeah, everything at the end, it's kind of like, well, this is still wrong and this is wrong, so we're all just gonna fix it and wrap it up in a package and ta-da, like happy ending. I would definitely say, like, no, trying to avoid spoilers here. But yeah, I wasn't a fan of the ending. It all just kind of got wrapped up really quickly, and you're like, wait, what? So, what would you say you would give this movie?
Half of a paw, maybe?
Half a paw? Yeah. Man, that is, I mean, understandable. I'd say, I want to say 1.5. Maybe I'm gonna say 1. I'm gonna say 1. I just feel like 1 is like nothing, but I'm gonna give this 1 cougar paw out of 4.
It was irritating.
It didn't deserve much. It wasn't even average. I would say I was ready to leave the theater like halfway through.
Enraging. It
irritated me
to watch it.
I was more just sleepy, but like
I was like, how dare you do this in this plot?
I was just full, so I was just ready to take a nap. But so wouldn't recommend this movie. Don't tell your friends, you know.
Or you could say, hey, you gotta watch this movie. It's one of the worst.
Play a trick on your friends. Be like, I saw this great movie, like 100% worth your time.
No, that wouldn't be fun. No.
Let's check in with Lily for her pick of the week.
Hi, this is Lily with Lily's pick of the week. This week I'm going to be talking about a film so controversial that the director received death threats. There was a staged suicide protest and had to relocate filming to a different country. The film is Water by Deepa Mehta. It starts out with a father waking his daughter, asking her if she remembers her wedding. She says she doesn't. He tells her that her husband has died and she's become a widow. The girl is Shuya, the protagonist of the film, and she is 7 years old. The director and Deepa Mehta have never steered away from dealing with very serious social issues. Her Element trilogy all deals with that, and this is the last one of the trilogy. Water is about widows in the 1930s. Remarriage had become legalized then, but it was still barely practiced all over the country. And before a widow, there were basically only 3 choices. Either marry the youngest brother of the dead husband, burn with your husband in the funeral pyre, or live your life in denial. This meant living in total devotion to religion in ashrams together with other widows. You were clad in identical white robes and your head was shaved, and you were supposed to be economically self-sufficient, meaning that these widows live in poverty. This all happens to Shuya when she's 7 years old. She barely understands the situation she's in. She thinks her mom is going to come back for her at any point. And while she slowly realizes that it's all youthful naivety, she also brings back some part of innocence to the other women who have been living in this secluded, isolated part of their lives for so long now. The film mightn't sound exceptionally happy, but it can be very, very joyful, and it's very, very sincere, but most of all, it's beautiful. It's just that Deepa Mehta has such incredible empathy and sincerity when depicting these women that there's even tragedy in the beautiful scenes. Just because that's how life is, there's no escaping that. It's just the conditions they live in. And there's no judgment and there's no preaching of a message in these films. It's basically just following them around, it's telling this part of their story. The films ask us questions like, how important is tradition? And this film deals with that you know, change has to happen, change over tradition. They're situated next to the river of Ganges, which water representing rebirth, but also representing a deep inset religion into their lives that might not have that much meaning anymore. And one of the characters say that, it's not about religion anymore, it's about money, and that can be true. These women were not let go of their families for religious reasons. These women were let go and put into these ashrams because of money. They were a burden, an economical and financial burden upon their families, which means that women don't mean anything in economics or even in the world. So for many, this film has been very upsetting, but I say let it upset. There are many people fighting actively against this film ever being made, ever being shown, and still want to ignore it. But doing that is not just ignorance, it's complete denial of a part of history that's incredibly important. So that's why I would recommend for anyone to watch it, whether or not you have any interest in that kind of part of history. It's still a very impactful film and with a great cast and a great director. So that has been my pick of the week. Tune in next week for my next choice.
Cool.